Welcome back to our Simple Healthy Life podcast, where our goal is to have real, insightful conversations on topics that we find interesting. And today, I always find this one interesting. And I think for me, it's one of those topics that it always is worth revisiting, especially with you, because I enjoy your perspective on these types of things. So for the audience, today we're just going to talk about gratitude. And that's a big word for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people downplay that word because it's hard sometimes to put your mind into gratitude or to choose gratitude. And a lot of times it feels like you're overlooking something or looking a certain direction to make sure you're not looking in the other direction, if that makes any sense, running away from something when you're choosing gratitude. Like I'm just gonna choose to think about all the good things in my life versus where I'm normally spending my time, which is choosing to think about the things that aren't going well or that I need to fix or tomorrow's problems that are coming inevitably in my brain. And I think a lot of us are like that. So today I wanted to spend some time and just let's talk about what it is, why it feels so awkward, how we can practice it. Again, I'm going to use the word practice a lot today. So I'll give you some opening thoughts on gratitude.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I think it's obviously a great topic. And, as we were thinking about it, the question came to mind as what's the opposite of gratitude? And I think the word that we settled on was entitlement. And so if we can kind of think about it for the rest of the discussion as maybe a bit of a spectrum of, gratitude being grateful as the far right side and entitled as the far left side. And I don't necessarily think it's simple to say that, a person, a complex individual is, fitting on that perspective, but maybe in each on that spectrum, but maybe in each moment we kind of, we're either more or less grateful or more or less feeling entitled. And, even as we talk about this, I think about myself as always needing work on that front. Could always be more grateful, could always take a step back and practice some of that. Could always think about the things that are going really, really well. In fact, I think it was just either this morning or yesterday.
Not the other day.
It wasn't the other day. No, it was either this morning or yesterday. And I remember I was going into my office. I closed my door and I thought, I hadn't thought about how thankful I am at a moment. And I had just a quick moment and that thought came up and I honored it. I thought about, wow, it was so great that I could grab a coffee and sit at home and do my job and work from home and, dedicate my, do my own schedule and do all those things. Like I was super happy or super grateful for in that moment. And it took just a short period of time, but I hadn't done that enough. And the recognition that I hadn't done it enough led to the mental habit or the action to practice it. And I thought, it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to be able to sit there and think about the things that are going well.
It is nice. And it's more than nice. It's a practice that will lead you in a direction to have a happier, more fulfilled, more purposeful life. And if I was to leave the labels off and say, hey, I got a practice that you can do to lead in a more purposeful, intentional, happy life, you'd be like, okay, let's do that, right? And then I say something like, it's just a mental exercise. People would go, yeah, I'm not really sure about that. Right? Isn't it wild? It's like, but isn't everything a mental exercise? Isn't almost everything that we do a mental exercise? Mm-hmm. And we know there's one out there that we can use intentionally. And to use your word, there's some friction around it. Mm-hmm. You'll feel a certain friction towards doing this exercise, at least at the beginning. But it does work. It's scientifically proven, documented, over and over and over again, that having a consistent gratitude practice leads down the path to a happier, more fulfilled, purposeful, intentional life.
Right. Right.
But why don't we do it then?
Yeah. Identity, ego. You know, I was spending some time with someone over the weekend, and I'm not going to use names or describe in detail for obvious reasons, reasons that will become clear in a moment.
Sean. No, I'm just kidding. Made that up. No idea. Just throwing names out there.
Drew. And this person I found to be actually kind of hard to be around, in fact, because we were doing a couple things, like kind of like event-based things, traveling and doing all sorts of things. And we were in a group, and this person was really hard to be around because it seemed as if everything that came out of their mouth was a complaint. And, I find myself, it's funny, like we've talked so much about how much inner work that you do and tolerance and resilience and all of that. But the discomfort that discontentment breeds in me, right? So when someone is very discontent and verbally so, that breeds a lot of discomfort within me. And I find myself like really retracting, and I can't even engage with that individual. And realistically, and then I'm like thinking, well, should I be? But I just see this person who just clearly is so misaligned. Their values are very different than mine, and it's very, very hard to connect. And I think, well, that must be a tough existence to look around and only see the negatives, only see the people who are aggravating or annoying, or the circumstances that are bad, or that life is never in your favor, or that you never have enough money, or whatever it is. To only see that must be really hard.
Yeah, problem for every solution. Mm-hmm. And it's not an easy place to be.
Yeah.
And we all can be in that spot for a little while. Mm-hmm. And I think so much of that is learned behavior. Mm-hmm. Probably serving them when they're younger because it kept them safe. Mm-hmm. And that's like one of the things that we're really, especially when we're younger, like our goal is to feel safe. And let's face it, there's places where you go when you're younger to feel safe. Hopefully we all have, a person or someone that made us feel safe or helped us feel safe. If you didn't have that, it could be a long time before you understand that even about yourself. But when we talk about this gratitude practice, if you were to like say to this person that you were around, like, hey, what's something you like? Give me something that you're interested in that's fun for you, that you're enjoyable, right? And we've all been around the person that's like, yeah, well, I used to like to run, but that's stupid because, like, or whatever, right? And you can't even get them to say something that is like, right, that is a positive. It just really comes down to the fact that they've never been exposed. Mm-hmm. They've never really been exposed to a gratitude practice, and the people that, were around them in their upbringing likely to be in that same vein. It's so... I understand this word discontent. For me, it becomes sad, mm-hmm. And actually have an interesting something. It's going to be hard for me to leave the names out, but I will say it this way. I had a couple family members that were older than me. They were the generation before. This one particular one that I'm thinking of, amazing human. Couldn't be happier to have him as my family member. However, also, he worked the same job for 30 years. And he complained about it every time. Like every single time we would hear about his job, it was something that was going on, that was, this person didn't do this thing, or this was a thing that didn't go the way it was supposed to go. Like, and I never really put two and two together until I started hearing my brother do it. And I was thinking to myself, like, man, that's learned behavior. That's definitely learned behavior. And I wanted so badly for him to not spend the next 30 years of his life doing it, and eventually he did move on to another position, another job. And we just did a podcast on the hedonic treadmill, and we were talking about, this, you're up and then you're down, and then you're up and then you're down. And here he is again, new job, new circumstance, new job, more money, better things, all the things, same you.
Yeah.
Right? But it's because of the way he's been wired through learned behavior to not look at the advantages, and I think we all have that blind spot in our world. I know I do. I know we all have these blind spots, and they can be numerous. They can be exclusive. They can tell you the person you were handling or speaking with this weekend, exclusively blind to the way the world could be, right? Their perspective. So when we think about gratitude versus entitlement, and we say, first I want to talk about this word should. How do you know if you're in a mindset is gratitude versus entitlement? If the word should keeps coming into your mind, you are feeling entitled. This should be better. Why? Because I said so, right? I should make more money. This person over there, they should have done it this way. That person you work with, they should have been this way. Like, every time you think about that, that's an entitlement mindset. Do you agree?
Oh yeah, I call those should thoughts. Yeah, and they can be beautifully said, very foundational to entitlement. They can also be very foundational to self-judgment too. I should be doing this. I should receive that. I should do better or whatever. Right? Like anytime you hear a should thought, you should disregard it.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Should thoughts feel so normal. They feel so natural. And then you get around people that have other should thoughts, and what do? They talk about it back and forth. They go, you're right. Yeah, you're so right. He should have done that. Yeah, no, you know what? Actually, that person over there, they should have done that too. And you spend their whole...
The root of gossip. Should.
You spend this entire time just going back and forth about the shoulds. And you're like, then you leave there and you don't feel better. You didn't solve anything. The person you were talking about or people you were talking about aren't going to even know. And you're going to reconvene in X amount of time. And guess what? You're going to be talking about all the things that should have happened between when you talked to them last and when you talk to them now. And what the challenge is, and what I want people to understand is, that feels so normal. It just feels like no friction there. Right? Like, oh, the state of Massachusetts should X, right? Like I know, right? I love talking about the news. I love talking about, I've stopped, thankfully I've stopped talking about listening to like the war in Ukraine and the stuff like that. But like, here I am, like, they should do this. Like, what are you talking about? You get your news from 4 top, like, I spend 45 minutes a day tops reading about this stuff, and I know what should happen, and I'm an expert on this stuff. But it feels so normal. It's super normal for me to say, like, they should have done this. Like, what? That's entitlement.
What's so interesting about this too, and this is a little divergence, but I think it's super relevant. The should thoughts being, even if it's like a political topic or presidential campaign or something, they've done studies where they take these political commentators or these experts, right, and they say, well, what is their prediction for the campaign or for this event, or what should be done, right? And they get, they have this beautiful commentary of like, we really should do this and we should do that and blah, 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 blah. And they actually take these people and they compare their predictions and their, like, their solutions to complete and utter randomness. And randomness does a better job, like the random number generator essentially does a better job at predictions in very complicated situations than the experts ever do. And the reason for that is that when it comes to events, when it comes to like social situations, and just life things, no person can be very accurate and be an expert in it because there's too many variables. When you take an expert who is something like a chess grandmaster, or like Magnus Carlsen or Hikaru or something like that, and you take those individuals who are experts, they get obviously outstanding scores on tests and against algorithms and bots and all that kind of stuff because there's controllable variables. There's direct feedback. They play a move, they play what game, and they either win or they lose, and every variable is the same no matter what. Tennis experts, same thing. Like athletes, same thing. They get direct feedback. The variables are almost always the same, and they excel. But when it comes to like very complicated situations, these experts are not experts.
Absolutely.
Which is so cool. I think it's so interesting. So when you talk about like the should dots, how do you know? The best expert in the world can barely. Even student scores, like they take like expert counselors and they say like, will this student succeed in college? Too many variables. The human potential is too complex to even predict. One single individual, randomness beats it better than any expert, which is so fascinating.
Oh my God, there's countless examples of this too. Like, I mean, just because you're talking about, think about the NFL draft. Mm-hmm. I mean, somebody took Jamarcus Russell. I'm a Raiders fan, so unfortunately, someone took Jamarcus Russell with the number 1 pick overall. Mm-hmm. They spent a better example. Actually, here's an interesting example. Do you remember Johnny Manziel? Okay, so Johnny Manziel, he played for Texas A&M. He actually, the Browns decided that they were going to take him. So the Browns, knowing how poor their track record was already at drafting quarterbacks, they hired this third-party organization, and they spent millions of dollars to essentially say, should we take Johnny Manziel, and will he be successful for the Browns at quarterback in the future? And the experts came back and said, no, don't do that. It's not the right thing to do. And the Browns said, well, we think we know better. We're going to do that anyways. Mm-hmm. And he was out of the league within 2 years.
Yep.
And it's like, that's just such a complex thing to try to figure out if this person even translates within the same sport, let alone these massively large decisions that were being sent down, and we're getting the 4-minute, between 2 commercials blurb about what we should or shouldn't do.
Right.
But I think all of this stuff speaks to our bigger point, because what society teaches us and shows us is that the shoulds are all there. We should feel entitled. We live in the greatest country in the world, and we should have a home, and we should be doing these things, and we should have all of this over and over and over again. So then what do? We're mimetic, mm-hmm. your words, right? Perfect. That's what we do. So then we go, hey, did you see that? We should have done that. You see what happened in that thing? And they should have done that. You see that building? They should have done it. None of this is serving us, right? And then we do it in the worst way. We do it down to our own social circles. Mm-hmm. And even worse than that, we do it to ourselves. I should be further along. More people should be listening to my podcast. I should be X, Y, and Z. I should not be this way, that way.
We do it in our relationship too. My wife should have done this.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You want to feel taken for granted? Mm-hmm. Start with the shoulds. Yeah. They should be this, and all of this is to say that is that entitlement mindset. Mm-hmm. And if you find yourself in that entitlement mindset, you got to do something to break the cycle. Right? You got to do something to break the cycle, because I think we've made our point. No one wants to live there. No one wants to use those words. No one wants to be talking about themselves in that way. And really, nobody really wants to be talking about others in that way.
Right.
So we're giving you the answer. It's like it's simple. The answer is the practice of gratitude, right? And the answer is the exact opposite of the should mindset. The answer is the exact opposite of the entitlement. Now, here's the challenge. When you start this process, we all know what's going to happen. it's going to feel fake. It's going to feel false. The shoulds are going to come in. You're going to go, I should have been doing this since I was 12. Someone should have told me this when I was younger, right? But that friction that you feel is the path towards what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel the friction. Don't run from it. Don't go, oh man, this feels so unauthentic. This feels so not me. Good, great, grand. That's what we're after.
We're after change.
We're after change. We're after this feeling that we're cultivating of gratitude. And sometimes the good thing about this feeling that we're talking about is we've all had times in our lives where we felt it, where we've touched it, whether it's because somebody did something nice for you or because you did something nice for them, and you felt that. Like, I mean, how good does it feel to like know that on Christmas morning, like you got the gift, you got it, you got the one that like the person really wanted. You knew that they were gonna want that, and you've been waiting. Maybe you even bought it in like July, and you're like keeping it in your room, and you're like, that feels so good. That is still gratitude. Right? It's not about just gratitude for the things we have. It's a gratitude with relationships, gratitude with internal gratitude, internal intrinsic reward. Like, I mean, that intrinsic reward of giving that gift is more, for me at least, and for others, and I'm not even going to say that I'm like so high and mighty, for others too, like that's better than getting the gift that you wanted, right? Yeah. And it can last longer too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I think that's it's a great, synopsis for gratitude, is that you have to recognize also when you're being a little bit more entitled, and you do that through noticing specific language, right? I should, or I must. Anything that's kind of judgmental probably should not be there, right? And what I always say is that you can't escape a prison unless you're in one. And so you always have to recognize, with any change, the first step is always recognizing where you're at, recognizing when the thing that you don't necessarily want to be there is happening, right? When you're, in the context of nutrition, we often talk about when you're overeating, right? How do you change overeating? Well, you should probably recognize in the moment when you're doing it. Too many of us recognize only in hindsight. We have this thought the next day, like, dang, I ate too much ice cream, or
guilty.
That was a targeted one toward you. Or, ooh, I said something I didn't mean. I was a little angry, or whatever it is. But the problem is that in those moments, it's too late. Their reflection is great, and it maybe provides you some direction, but in terms of change, it's too late. You have to implement change in the moment. You have to embrace the friction of saying, well, maybe I'll put down the ice cream right now because I'm full and it doesn't feel really good. I'm going to feel like too overly full afterwards, and this is the right thing.
I love it. I think it's spot on.
Yeah.
I think we should probably close with maybe a good idea, definitely a good idea, when you hear yourself. And start with when you actually hear yourself, the words coming out of your mouth. And when you hear the word should, stop for a minute and allow yourself a moment in gratitude, just for a second. Just see if you can offset it, almost like play a game with yourself. Okay, well, I should have gotten that promotion. And then start with, I'm really glad that I have the means to buy myself lunch today. Right? She should have done this. My wife should have done that. I'm really glad that I get to live with somebody that I really love. And just play the game. Notice how easy it is to do the shoulds, and how much thought you have to put into the gratitude. And then that takes a second. And then do it again, 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 and then over and over and over again. And then eventually you find yourself where you are, right? Where you were just, one morning you sat down, you're like, man, I haven't spent any time in gratitude for a minute. Man, I'm really happy to have this cup of coffee. I'm really happy to be able to sit at my own desk and make my own schedule. And remember that perspective is just a crazy thing that only you get the opportunity to have. you're the only person that gets to have your perspective and gets to notice it. Gets to notice when it's where you want it to be or when you're on autopilot. And if you've lived most of your life on the, I hate to call you entitled, not you specifically, audience, and keep listening because I'm not calling you entitled, but when you start to feel the shoulds and the entitlement come out, know that that's just the way you were, that's your learned behavior. And gratitude is a way to learning something new.
Right, right. And it's a constant thing, you know, like kind of like we even mentioned, you know, I hadn't spent the time to do the gratitude practice. So I was feeling on that spectrum probably a little bit more to the entitled side, right? Maybe more should thoughts are bred out of that side of the spectrum. And so, yeah, I think it's a valuable practice. Obviously, countless amounts of research, countless amounts of data on the practice. So you don't need more evidence, you just need more action. But we'll wrap it up there. As always, thank you for listening. If you do have any thoughts or comments or whatever, drop us a line, drop us an interaction, give us some love, and we will catch you next time.